Hello and welcome to Sonder. My name is Maggie and I am a knitter, spinner, sewist, bibliophile, doctor, and mother living here in Denver, Colorado. How are all of you? I have been having a little bit of a hard time, not gonna lie. I think it's just hard right now. I think we are all living through the same reality, and being a healthcare provider and a pediatrician in America today is hard. It's really hard and really sad. And I'm not gonna get into it a lot here because honestly, I need a break. I need an escape. I need distance from work. Yeah, I don't even know what to say. Like, I think we're all living through this right now, and it's hard. Transition is really hard and really scary, especially when the administration is doing horrible things. And it can make me feel a little out of control and unmoored. And I have found that it's been really peaceful and healing for myself to go into my craft and go into my community at times like this. And so I am so thankful to have you all here. And I just, we need to stick together. We need to get through this together and fight together. And I am so happy that I do have a community that I can retreat to and spend time with, and is full of just beautiful, vibrant people who are just looking to make things and make connections and make the world a better place. Like, we are makers here, and that comes in all varieties, and I just love that energy. Like, I need that energy. I need to manifest it. Yeah. So I hope that you can spend a little bit of time with me connecting and looking at the things that I've been making and the things I've been reading. And at the end, I'll talk a little bit about what I've been up to in the last couple of weeks since I saw y'all last. Spoiler alert, it's just been a lot of like skiing and hanging out with my 2.5-year-old. So not that exciting. And I've been working a lot. I've been in the hospital a lot, which has been really beautiful, but also really hard. And I think, I'm still learning how to find that balance of being able to work and be fully present in my work, but then leave it there and go home, especially because the things that I do in my job are hard. And oftentimes, my husband talks about, like, when I come home from a hard day at work, it's very different than what he means when he had a hard day at work, which is not to say that his hard days at work are less important than mine, but when your profession is meeting people where they're at the worst times of their lives, and bearing the burden of grief and loss with people, it takes a lot. So I have retreated fully into my knitting era. I have not done any sewing, but I have done a little bit of cutting out of fabric to keep working on my quilt that I'm working on. And let's just get into it. I feel like that's enough waffling. Let's talk about chatting. Let's talk about knitting and making, and let's have an escape from the whole world. I'll start off by talking about what I'm wearing. This is my traveler hoodie. This is my first and only ever hand-spun sweater. I knit this out of yarn that I spun out of like 7 braids of Hello Yarns Enchilada Night colorway, which was this like really beautiful earthy rainbow colorway that I was obsessed with. And I knit this up in 2022. So it's like 2 years old now, which is crazy. But honestly, I don't know if I like overspun the yarn or what, but it has held up remarkably well. I was looking at it, there are like a couple little pills under the arms here, but for the most part, like I didn't de-pill this. This is just like her in her natural form. And I love it. This is probably the thing that I am most proud of that I've ever made. And you can see why, it's amazing. Don't you love it? I wear this all the time. I find it very comfortable. It truly is a sweatshirt for me, something that I just throw on all the time, and I highly recommend it. The other thing that I'll say, which if you've been here for a while, you already know this, but I did run out of yarn. So this hoodie, the hood of this hoodie eats yarn. Like I swear, it just disappears. And I thought I was gonna have more than enough yarn, and I ended up having to like panic buy another braid of this, which wasn't even on the Hello Yarn website, but I emailed the dyer and was like, please, and they did have some left over, and so I was able to get another braid of this. But this is the yarn that I had to spin up afterward, and it is considerably thicker than the rest of the sweater. And honestly, it was not a big deal. I feel like you can't even tell. Like I can tell when I'm wearing it, but I don't think that you can tell from the outside. But I did have to significantly change the pickup rate on this arm and essentially just completely change this arm. So this arm is knit with way fewer stitches than this arm, but again, I think because of the gauge, you can't tell, it just looks the same to me. I have a couple of favorite parts of this yarn. One is this sort of like orangey reddish stripe right here, and then over this shoulder, there's like a really deep emerald green triangle. I love it. I did not do any yarn management. I just let this be a fun exploration of color and let the yarn shine, and knew that it was gonna be more of an art piece, let's just say. And I couldn't be happier. It's the best. I know that a lot of people are spinning to knit the Traveler. Like I think Andrea Mowry is doing a cowl with that right now. And it's so good. Do it. Highly recommend. Couldn't recommend more. I am drinking a cup of tea out of my Broken Earth mug from Rhinebeck a couple of years ago. And it's delicious. I love it. Let me start off by talking about my only finished object, which is this pair of socks. I'm sticking to it, y'all. This is my January socks from my Farmer's Daughters Fibers sock club, and I just knit a very simple stockinette sock because this yarn is gorgeous. I think it's sort of this like brownish orangish, but then has these bits of blue in it, which is honestly a combination that I would have never thought to go together, but I dig. And then the contrast color is this sort of darkish teal that is reminiscent of the blue bits in the yarn. But because this yarn is like kind of wackadoodle, I decided to just do a very simple vanilla sock pattern. The one thing that I will say, I am still trying to discover what is my ultimate sock pattern, just for like simple, straight stockinette socks. And I'm almost there, but I do want to make one tweak to this. So I have been knitting 64 stitch socks forever, and I've realized recently that they've always been too big, and so I went down to a 60 stitch sock, which fits my foot way better. But I've always thought that I had a high arch and I don't. And so previously, I really like the heel flap and gusset, and I have knit this, I think, for 17 garter ridges, and then I go into my gusset after that. And I always thought that I needed that because I thought that I had a really big distance over here and that I needed the extra stitches there to come out to sort of support that. But I have noticed that the socks that I've been knitting in the same way with the 60 stitches fit really well, except they're a little bit loose over my sort of heel and instep. And then I went and got a new pair of ski boots, which I'm super stoked about. And when you're getting fit for ski boots, there's a lot of measurements that happen. And the guy that was like measuring me to fit me for boots was like, wow, you have really narrow and also really like flat, sort of like that part of your foot that is where your foot meets your ankle, like over the top of your foot, is really shallow. And I was like, who knew? You know, I feel like you have these thoughts about your body and they are often inaccurate. And it is nice to have like an objective person from the outside look at things like that and be like, oh, this is actually very shallow. And so on my next pair of vanilla socks, I am going to take a few stitches out of this in order to see if I can get it to fit my foot a little bit better over the instep. So very much looking forward to trying that out. These still fit my feet great. It's just that through time and throughout the day, as the fabric kind of stretches, it does have more room that I think is totally necessary. So I really love these, and I'm also very proud of myself for continuing my box of socks. I haven't totally decided. I wonder if y'all have what y'all think. I'm going back and forth on if I should knit all 12 socks from this month and not wear them and then have them as like a gift to myself on New Year's Eve, or on my birthday, like knit up until my birthday, which is in October, and see if maybe that's what I do. Or I could knit them and just immediately start wearing them, which would also be kind of fun. So I don't know, I'm still trying to decide. These are yet unworn, but it may be hard for me to resist. And I wear my hand knit socks all the time, especially because when I'm in the hospital wearing like Dansko clogs, it's actually nice to have a little bit of extra warmth because they're quite cool even in the summertime. And so part of me is like, just wear them, but part of me is like, oh, what a beautiful gift to get at the end of the year. So trying to decide, but so far I'll show you the next month colorway, and I am obsessed with this year's Farmer's Daughters Fibers Sock Squad. The next pattern I will talk about, that's the only finished object I have. Me doing these more often means that it's gonna be rare for me to have a finished object because I have a 2.5-year-old, I work a full-time job, like I don't have that much time to knit. But with that, I thought that it would be fun to kind of talk about my plans every time I film a video and think, it's like plans, hopes, dreams, like if I could knit a million things, what would I be working on? And so I have a few things to talk about in that regard at the end. But the next thing I have to talk about is my February sock knitting. And this was this really beautiful, I don't even know, so it's actually snowing a little bit now. And so I don't know if this will even be the best representation. But this is this really beautiful, almost the exact color of my eyes, green. And I'm obsessed. It's kind of like this brownish, greenish deliciousness. And it came with this kind of like peach. I saw these together, y'all. What sorcery are they doing? I would have never thought to put this with this color, and now I'm literally obsessed with it. But I am knitting the Ambrose socks the Paddington socks by Ambrose Smith. which is this really beautiful textured sock. I, as you can see, have one of them finished and have just cast on and just knit the cuff of the second sock while I've been watching my new favorite show, Shrinking. Me and my husband are absolutely obsessed with it. It is completely unethical, but like so good that I can't stop. It's just amazing. But this is a really beautiful pattern sock that is really easy to memorize and so really fun to knit. It just has this sort of intermittent sort of garter rib. I don't even know how to describe it, but I am obsessed. It's really beautiful. I knew that I wanted to knit this with contrasting heels and toes, but I did want to try doing the Fish Lips Kiss heel. The only time I've ever done the Fish Lips Kiss heel is with like slip stitch or colorwork socks, but I just kind of wanted to see what it would be like on a more ribbed sock. People talk often about how much they love ribbed socks, and I do love them. At the beginning of the day, from my experience, they really hold on to your foot. The only thing for me personally is that as the day progresses, they start to get very loose because that stretches out and they just kind of keep expanding in a way that stockinette socks don't do. And so instead of doing a heel flap and gusset, I wanted to do the Fish Lips Kiss heel because then there would be less space along here, again, because my boot fitter told me that I have very narrow and like flat this portion of my foot. And I want to see how this fits. I want to see if this fits better. Other than that, I followed the pattern pretty much exactly. I think I did add a couple of extra rows onto the cuff of the foot just because I almost always, if I'm not in Danskos, am wearing Blundstone boots and I like them to stick up a little bit out of the top of my boots, and so I just know my desired length. And yeah, I really love these. They're super fun to knit. It was a really fast pattern to memorize, which just makes it so that once you've knit, you know, this far, you're like, oh, I've got the pattern. Now I can just go until the sock is done, which is honestly my type of sock. I don't like to knit a sock as much. I was thinking about knitting Sari Nordland's Poet socks for this because it is so solid. And I do really want to knit those. Like, they are the most beautiful socks, but I just don't know if I can bring myself to have to knit a sock pattern where I'm like looking at the pattern for every row. Like, these are escapist projects for me that I just take here and there, and I just don't know that that is in the cards for me. But I also really want them, so we'll see what happens. But I really love these. I'm very excited to have the second pair. Ugh. They're so good. They're so good. And I'm also so proud of myself. I'm sticking to it. I do think that there are a couple of other socks that I have kind of wound up that I would really love to make into socks, and even one that is on the needles, like halfway done with the first sock. And I would really love to finish that. However, I'm realizing that I really only have it in me to knit one sock per month, at least during the winter when I'm knitting a lot of other things. And so I'm hopeful that during this summer, when it's kind of too hot for me to have like a whole knitted object on top of me, that I'll be doing, you know, maybe knitting 2 socks a month. But for right now, I'm really just trying to keep up with the Farmer's Daughter Fibers socks. Alrighty. The next thing I have to talk about is my Cumulus blouse by Petite Knit. Y'all, I tried this on. It is perfection. I can't even, literally, like, it's been a really long time since I've knit something and tried it on and literally like squealed because I'm so excited to wear this. I am so into it. I'm knitting this out of black mohair from Biche et Bouche. And I got this at the Woolly Thistle, I believe. And I have made so much progress on this. Y'all, when the world is on fire and you're having a hard time, I feel like a stockinette stitch sweater is the move, especially because this grows so fast because it's knit on US 7 needles and it's just going. I did things a little bit out of order from what Petite Knit recommends, and that is because I'm not totally sure if I'm playing yarn chicken or not. I feel like for me with this type of yarn, with mohair yarn, it's so hard for me to judge how much yarn I have left that I just wanted to do it this way so that now I can just knit until I run out. I have these two left. You're holding two strands of the mohair together to knit this sweater. And I have knit, obviously, the whole yoke. And I think when I left you, I had knit part of the body. Well, I have knit both sleeves, and I did end up knitting the sleeves a little bit longer than Petite Knit recommends, but for reference, I am 5'10", and so for me, these, you know, I have long arms, and this is what I needed. And that's also part of it, is that like I'm knitting the medium size and lengthening the arms, and I have a pretty short torso, and so I'm hopeful that everything will be copacetic, but if I have to crop the sweater a little bit, I would rather know that before having to make the sleeves shorter. So anyway, these go perfectly to the end of my arm. And I have knit both of them, as you can see, including the cast off. This is not that exciting to look at because it's black yarn, so you can't see anything, but I promise you it's beautiful. Hopefully during my next podcast I'll be wearing it. And then I also already picked up and did the neckband. One thing is that Petite Knit does give you a ratio of like what you should pick up. So for instance, you know, it'll say from here to here, pick up 1 stitch for every stitch, from here to here, however many stitches for each row, or like this number of stitches for this number of rows. And I followed that as well as I could with black yarn and almost 35-year-old eyes. I was like, I'm just going for it. But it turned out perfectly. I did, for my size, I think I was supposed to pick up 12 more stitches than I did, but I just got to the end and I was like, and it looks great. I'm totally obsessed with it. I am obsessed. It's like a low enough V that it's like truly looks like a V-neck blouse, but not so low that I have to wear a t-shirt under it. Like, I think I'm gonna live in this, live in it, except for that I have a calico cat where I have to be very careful that she doesn't just like make this her home and have it full of white cat hair. But I now am just gonna pick up and knit the body until I'm pretty close to running out of yarn, and then I'll bind off. The bottom is also an I-cord bind off, so all of the bind offs are I-cord bind offs, which I think is just so polished and so beautiful. Y'all, it is dumping snow outside. This is what I needed. This is bringing me all the beautiful healing energy. I just need you to know that it is gorgeous. I love the snow. I know there are people who do not feel that way, but I love the snow, and I just feel like this is the world blanketing me in some peace and comfort. It is supremely beautiful outside. Anyway, Cumulus blouse hopefully will be done in the next podcast, and you'll see me wearing it, and then you'll probably be sick of seeing me wearing it because I'm gonna wear it every day. It's also just so light and fluffy. I can't get over it. I can't get over it. I also tried it on, and at first I was like, ooh, is the mohair gonna be a little bit like itchy? Not itchy at all. I don't know if it's just this like Le Petit Mohair by Biche & Bouche, but it is sublime. I'm obsessed. And the other whip that I have been spending the most time on over the last couple of weeks is my Jenny Jacket V-neck. which I had talked to y'all about. Let's see if we can see it here. You can totally see it. It's so funny because in person, you cannot see this stripe. Let me try to hold it up for y'all. So you can see from here to here that it looks like a lighter white. In person, you legitimately cannot see it at all. And at first I was like, what is going on? Because honestly, like, this is all natural wool. It's like from the same animal. It's like spun up in the same way. And I was like, I just don't understand. And like holding the yarns up, I'm like, they look exactly the same. And y'all, I figured it out. So this is farm yarn that I got in Rhinebeck, and I'm absolutely obsessed with it. It is Solitude Wool Targhee 2, which is US grown and spun wool. And I figured out what happened. So this is farm yarn. Farm yarn is beautiful and eccentric. And you can see, I think, quite clearly between these two that the yarn has different grist, would you say? One of them is slightly thicker than the other, just slightly, but it is enough to make it look a little bit less holey, like meaning actually holes through the fabric, not as in celestial, like. So you see how this one is thicker than the other. So with that, there are less holes in this fabric, and that means that it looks more white because of physics. So there's just more space between these than this part, and I think this, you can even feel it, is a little bit more dense. And the density makes this look lighter because there's less dark light passing through the fabric, which, so cool, so cool. Honestly, once I discovered that, I was like, I don't even care. I think that's awesome. And so I cast on the second sleeve, and I have been knitting away on it and loving it. Again, like Petite Knit's attention to detail makes the knitting process so easy. I was very much dreading having to pick up the stitches and knit this sleeve until I read it, and she tells you exactly how much to pick up, like what ratio. And why don't all patterns do this? Honestly, it's just like, to me, I'm like, it is so much easier than you just being like, pick up 120 stitches. And then I'm like out here with like removable stitch markers, trying to like measure like from here to here is roughly half and then a quarter, and then trying to get it spread out evenly. Like, it's a disaster. It's so much easier when you're just like, for every this many rows, pick up this many stitches, you know? That I'm like, all right, I can do that. No harm, no foul. Anyway, that is my tangent. I am not a designer, so what do I know? But if she can do it, why can't others, you know? Anyway, I really love how this is turning out. It is definitely slow moving. Like, this pattern is, as you can see, all ribbing, and that just makes it grow slower. And I'm okay with that. I'm really enjoying working with this beautifully rustic farm yarn. I'm also very excited to see what happens when this fabric is blocked, and to see if this sort of more dense stripe is eliminated from the fabric melding together. I don't know, that'll be so interesting. I'm very excited about that. But I am trying to decide, because even though I have accepted that on video you can see that, even though in real life you can't, I don't really want another stripe like that. And so what I'm thinking is that I will knit the cuffs with, I have like 2 or 3 skeins that are the more thinner, and then just that one that is the thicker. And I'm thinking that I'll use that thicker one for the button bands and the cuffs, because I feel like those have the most wear. And I think that's what I've decided. So hopefully you won't see that kind of stripe again, which I mean, I don't know why I care about it because at this point it's like there, but you know, here we are. So anyway, I've been working away at this and really enjoying it. It did take me, I would say, a week to just like sit with it and be sad and like mourn that there was that stripe. And then I like showed my husband and showed some of my knitting friends, and all of them were like, you can't see that. And so then I like took a step back and was like, you're right, just because it's like on this random YouTube video, like I have a great community on here, but in real life, like that's where I live, you know? Like why am I worried about this stripe that you can only see on a video when I don't live in a video? I live in the real world. So anyway, that is my tangent for today. One of many, it seems. The only other thing that I have been working on project-wise is my quilt, and I've done very little work on it. I sewed up all of the previous fabrics that I had, and it was not big enough. And then I kind of went back and I was like, do I want to repeat some of these and not all of them? And then I was like, well, I feel like you kind of need 2 of every one or 1 of every one, but it'll look weird if like a couple of them are repeated. And so anyway, I bought more fabric in a very similar color story. I did want a little bit more of these sort of like greens. And so I got some really beautiful fabrics, fat quarters off of Etsy, that will go with this beautiful quilt that I'm making. And these came in and I was completely obsessed with them. And then I cut out all of the fat quarter, I cut out all of the squares that I would need for the next part of the quilt. And then I stopped. The cutting is so hard for me, and I do need to cut out some more of the like darker teal. And so I have all of these cut out, and this is all of the squares that I will need to make a queen size quilt for downstairs. But I didn't have it in me to cut out the other strips. And so I was like, you know what, this is enough. When I get excited, I'll cut out another one. And I really don't want this to be like a forever project that then languishes and never gets finished. And so I am planning to cut out the second bit of this quilt in the next like week or 2. And then once it's all cut out, it's sewn together super quickly. That part is super fun and really enjoyable. So it's really just the cutting out of squares that I do not enjoy. That is all of the crafting works in progress and finished objects that I have to talk about today. But like I said earlier, I do think that it would be fun to, instead of having one video that's like my 2025 plans, which honestly I would love to make, but I would hate to edit, I thought that it would be more fun to split it up into chunks and just have a little section at the end of my crafting talk that's like, what yarn in my pantry is getting me excited and what things am I most excited to work on coming soon. I don't know what soon means, but I do have a lot of projects that I'm really, really excited to work on, and so I thought that I would talk about them here. One is something that I really need. So I showed y'all in my last podcast that really beautiful Nutidin hat that I made, the Oslo hat by Petite Knit. And I have been living in that hat since I made it. Like, I am obsessed with it, completely obsessed. And I really want to make another one of those hats and then a set of mittens. I really like the just like plain mittens that Petite Knit has that have like a pretty long cuff, because I have very long arms, and because of that, most of my jackets are not actually long enough. And so I had this in my stash for a long time. This is Lola Bean Yarn Co. All Growed Up. And this is the 7228 Kid Mohair Silk lace weight in the Lavender Bouquet colorway, which I just thought was so beautiful. And then I was looking around at my local yarn store and I saw this and I was like, those match perfectly. Sorry, the lighting is absolutely terrible because it's snowing, but here we are. This is Juniper Moon Farms, which I love. They're Patagonia Organic Merino. It's 100% wool and it is 100% delicious. It is in the wisteria color and it is, I feel like that is like the most accurate color. It is this really beautiful purple, which I love, like a lavender purple. It's one of my favorite colors. I don't know if it looks good on me, but who cares for a hat? And I am planning on knitting. I have 2 skeins of this. They were super, for me, I thought quite cheap, 16 bucks per 100 grams. And they're like beautifully woolen spun, gorgeous, gorgeous wool. And it's that type of wool where it's dyed in the wool and then spun up and it just has like the most beautiful depth to the color. So I am planning on holding these together. This is a, I would say like sport weight, maybe DK weight. I think it's a sport weight. Let's see. It is 382 yards per 100 grams. So I would say between a fingering and a sport weight, actually. And this with that, oh. So this is something that I am probably gonna cast on pretty soon because it's an object that I really need, but I'm not gonna need for that long because before we know it, spring will have sprung. I have already started seed shopping for my garden. I'm gonna bring y'all on the garden tours this summer. It's gonna be great. I have a huge vegetable garden. I have 5 like big raised beds in our backyard, and we essentially don't buy produce during the summer, which is awesome. But anyway, I digress yet again. But I really need a pair of gloves and a nice winter hat. And I just think that this is the perfect knit to work on that is sort of the bridge between winter and spring, because it is definitely a winter object, but with a spring color. Which brings me to my next thing that I'm excited about, and that is the Ingrid pullover. So I have been obsessed as long as the Ingrid pullover has been alive. I have loved it. I bought it immediately when it came out, and I have known that I wanted to knit it with this yarn, which is Yampa Valley Fiberworks. It is from a mill in Craig, Colorado, which is just about 45 minutes away from my hometown. And all of their wool that they mill for a lot of different producers, but the wool and milled things that they sell at their little shop at their mill is all from their sheep, like in their backyard. So this is like the most local wool I can get. It is grown in the Yampa Valley where I grew up. It is spun in the Yampa Valley where I grew up, and it is the most special wool and yarn that I have in my collection. And I have knit a couple of sweaters out of their wool, and I'm just obsessed with it. But about a year and a half ago, I bought this amazing colors called Seasons Change, and it is, again, the lighting here is insane, but it is kind of this like beautiful sherbet orange. And I have this amazing Rowan mohair to go with it. And again, I feel like this will be the perfect combination between a winter knit that I will wear all summer long. I am picturing throwing this on while camping, throwing it on in the backyard, and getting to wear it all summer long. And also just like at the end of winter when the days are getting longer, but your soul is tired from the darkness, I just think having bright poppy knits is like what my body needs. I also think looking at this knit that it would be so much fun because it's literally just like one more row, because you have these stripes of texture that just, I feel like this sweater is gonna knit itself, except that I'm gonna be very excited to knit it. And I just think this will be beautiful. At first I thought, because this is a worsted weight, at first I thought about just knitting this alone and not holding it with a mohair, but I did decide to hold it with the mohair because I do think this is hand-dyed fiber, and in order to make it look less hand-dyed without having to alternate skeins, I thought using it with the mohair, holding it together, would just kind of ease out any transitions that might arise. So this is the one that I am literally having to keep myself from casting on. Like, I know that I will not finish that Jenny Jacket V-neck if I have this cast on. And so I am making myself not cast it on actively right now, but I don't know how much longer I'm gonna hold out. The last project, or no, I have two more. Ugh, this is too many. It's too many. Is it too many? I don't know. I love these things. The next one I'll talk about is the Amy Slipover, which is a Sadness Garn pattern, and I bought the exact yarn for that pattern because I'm obsessed with it. I have the pattern book. I really want to make this. Part of it is that soon we are gonna try for a second baby, which maybe that's TMI, but you know, here we are. And I think that that knitted object is an object that I would be able to wear with a changing body that comes with pregnancy, because there are the ties at the side. And I am really excited about having that object in my wardrobe. The other thing is that I have been planning to knit this really beautiful pattern. I'll try to put a picture of it, but it is a really beautiful Fair Isle, kind of like alternating orange and tealy blue Fair Isle pattern that was in, I think, like Shetland Wool Week from several years ago. And I'm so sorry, I don't remember anything about the artist who made that pattern, but I will put it all here on the video. But I don't know how much I will wear that object, but I'm also so obsessed with it that I think what I want to do is I want to make the Amy Slipover so that I have a sense of how the object comes together. And then I would like to self-draft a similar object as the Amy Slipover, but with steeks at the side, and knit it in the same colorway and the same stitch pattern as that vest. So just like picture the Amy Slipover, but with like beautiful Fair Isle patterning, but with the like long ties and things like that of the Amy Slipover with that Fair Isle. I am so into it. I think I would wear it all the time. I think I would wear that object a lot more than just the vest itself. And so I have the vest pattern. I have some of the yarn for the vest, and I think I'll probably buy a little bit more of that yarn and knit the Amy Slipover, and then self-draft a steeked slipover Fair Isle pattern. So I don't know. I've thought about like, is that something I would want to like write up into a pattern, but it's not going to be enough of my own ideas, I think, to make it ethical to do that. But I will take you along if you have any desire to make it for yourself. I'm thinking about kind of filming a how-to kind of like epic journey from knitting the Amy Slipover all the way to kind of self-drafting my own pattern. So, and then the last thing, which I brought up before, but now that I have tried on my Cumulus blouse and am completely tickled pink with it, it's the perfect garment, I really want to knit my second version of that in this beautiful Farmer's Daughters Fibers mohair in the Gary Cooper colorway. That again is practically the same exact color as my eyes, which are the same color as my mom's eyes. So I feel like I get to say that it's my favorite color, and that it's my favorite color of green and my favorite color in the whole world, because it is beautiful and also my mom's eyes, which I love her. Anyway, hi Mom, she watches these. But I am planning on knitting the Cumulus blouse out of this beautiful green mohair, and this is something that I'll be obsessed with. I will also want to wear constantly, and so this is very, very high on my list of things to cast on and knit up, but gosh, there's so many beautiful objects to have in the world. Okay, that is all of the making chat that I have to talk about, but I do have several books to talk about. Hello. I apologize for the very abrupt change in location. My wonderful cleaning lady, who has been working with us for a long time, showed up. I knew she was coming, but I didn't know what time, and the time was then. And while I don't mind that people know that I do this, it is a little bit embarrassing for me to film with somebody else around. And so we have changed locations. We are actually in my basement. So the lighting is not great, but we're just here to talk about books now. So I don't think the lighting is super worrisome. And we are actually sitting right next to my sewing desk. I don't want to show you, but this is where I do a lot of my sewing of both garments and the quilts that I've been working on, which I may actually be able to show you the quilt blocks since they're down here. Let me just grab them real fast. So I know that you all have already seen these, but this is one of the quilt blocks, and these will be sort of angled this way, so they're not this way, they'll be angled like diamonds. And then I did finish all of the other quilt blocks that I had set out to work on. I don't really think it's worth kind of holding all of these up. And you know what? They're not perfect, but I feel like they are actually, for someone who doesn't quilt regularly, quite beautiful. Let me just show you some of my favorites. I really love this one. It's like dandelions. And then I really love this yellow one, which they're all beautiful, but these are just happen to be my favorite. And look, you know, from the distance, I think it looks great. Get up close and see that there are errors all over this. But you know what? Nobody's looking that close. Let's see. Those are most of my favorites. I know y'all already saw this one, but I really love this one that has books on it. I think those are upside down. Books this way. And this one that has like beetles. So I am very much looking forward to finishing this quilt. I think it's going to look absolutely gorgeous down here. And I do think that the new colors I picked out will go with the current color scheme that I have, but also add a little bit more depth and different colors. So I can put up a picture of the quilt that I'll be working on, and I kind of already have laid them out in a certain order, but I think I'm going to move that around because there isn't really a whole lot of like the sort of olive green tones and things like that in the colors that I currently have. So I'll need to kind of sprinkle those in amongst the others. But I've really loved working on this quilt. I've gone a little bit rogue. The pattern that I'm using, I think the largest quilt size is a like lap quilt, and I'm making a queen size quilt for downstairs for this room, for the bed that's right over there. Yeah. Anyway, and so I'm having to go a little bit rogue, but I think it'll work out. You know, I feel like quilting is so fun because it all works out in the end and it's fine. But let's talk about books. Did I grab them? Where are they? They're here. So since I last saw you, I have finished 3 novels, and I am currently reading 3 books right now, but they're very different types of books. So I will go over them. The first book that I finished reading since I last saw you was a book that I actually had already started reading during my last podcast, and that is Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow by Gabrielle Zevin. I don't know exactly how to think or feel about this book. It is a beautifully written literary fiction novel that follows mainly 2 friends and the found family that they have as they navigate life. It starts with these 2 friends meeting when they are children, when they're, like preteens, in a children's hospital in Los Angeles. And they develop a friendship at that children's hospital, and then they drift apart and meet again when they are in college, both attending different universities in Boston. And they run into each other on the subway, and that reignites a really beautiful but complicated friendship between these 2 people. It follows them as they work as artists to create video games. And the video games that they create, the way that Gabrielle Zevin talks about the video game process and how they're made is utterly fascinating and beautiful. And that is coming from somebody who doesn't play video games. This is not something that I was destined to love because I love video games. No shade against video games. I just don't happen to partake in them, mainly because when I am wanting to do something with my hands, it's usually crafting or knitting, and I can't really do that and play a video game at the same time. But the way she talks about it makes me really care and really interested in the video game making process and what games can do for people and what they can mean. It also follows really this story is a story about connection and about human relationships. And while I find that the story handled that with such care and such beauty, and there are portions of this book that made me sob in a way that literary fiction hasn't done for me in quite a while. I sob even harder and more disgustingly during the Fitz and the Fool / the Realm of the Elderlings, but we'll get into that later. That's just because I love these characters, but it's rare that I have that strong and that visceral of a connection with characters that are just in one singular book. And so obviously this was written with such beauty and such tact that it made me really, really care about the people in it. But I also felt in a certain way that I didn't really there's one character who I loved and the rest I didn't really care for. And that makes it hard for me to really root for a story. I am such a character-driven reader that if there are characters that I don't love, it is hard for me to feel really invested in the story. Hold on one second. Yampa really wants to get out. That being said, I do feel like this novel was beautifully done and made me feel things, which I think ultimately these forms of art, that is what they're striving to do. And it definitely accomplished that. I think that I just ended the novel with a sense of beauty, but also a deep sense of melancholy. And I'm not sure that that was what I needed at this point in my life. I think my job is so hard and has such profoundly sad moments, some of which I feel were beautifully represented in this book. And I think that's part of why I had such an extreme response to it. But I also think that I need to have some redemption and positivity. And honestly, I didn't really feel like I got that. And that's okay. I think there are some books where you don't need to feel that redemption. I'm thinking of like one of my favorite novels in the entire world is A Little Life. And that book is deeply sad, but I also feel like the characters are ones that I deeply love. And even though it is very sad and very melancholy, I think the positive aspects to it are there in A Little Life that weren't present for me in this novel. So I gave it like a 4 out of 5 because obviously it made me feel things and I thought it was beautifully done, but it is not like an all-time favorite for me. So I couldn't quite give it a 5 out of 5, but it was so beautiful and I would recommend it. But knowing that it is very melancholy. Like when I heard about a literary fiction about artists and relationships and video games, like I thought it was going to be different than it was, and it is deeply sad. So that is Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow by Gabrielle Zevin. The next book that I finished, I need to pull up my computer because I don't have these books here with me. But the next book that I wanted to talk about was All the Colors of the Dark by Chris Whitaker. This was a really interesting novel. I gave this probably like a 3 or 4 out of 5, maybe 3.5 out of 5. It is a really interesting story that follows a community that has been ravaged by young girls disappearing in their community, and essentially is a mix, like a compilation between a thriller, serial killer, cop story, literary fiction, and historical fiction. And it is really interesting. I think that it's something that was really, really fun to read. I read it really, really fast because all of the chapters are really short and I feel like every chapter kind of ends on like a cliffhanger. And I thought that they did a really, really good job of making me care very deeply about the two main characters, which again, I just talked about is something that really matters a lot to me. I think that the reason why I am not giving it like a 5 out of 5 is that I do feel like it just wasn't like an all-time favorite of all time. It was highly entertaining and so fun to read and really fast-paced, and I, as someone who really likes kind of like the true crime genre, thought that the mystery of the whole thing was really interesting, and I thought that the way that they handled the art in it was really beautiful. As someone who really cares about the arts, I thought having that be a part of the book was really interesting. And yeah, it was super fun. It follows, again, like two main characters who are very close when they are children. And I don't want to give anything away because it's so fun to like read it as it's happening. So I feel like it's like one of those things where it's like hard to talk about because like, how do you define it? Because you don't want to give anything away. Maybe I'll just read the back of the book so that I'm not giving away anything that isn't already explicitly stated on the text. 1975 is a time of change in America. The Vietnam War is ending, Muhammad Ali is fighting Joe Frazier, and in the small town of Montclair, Missouri, girls are disappearing. When the daughter of a wealthy family is targeted, the most unlikely hero emerges, Patch, a local boy with one eye who saves the girl and in doing so leaves heartache in his wake. Patch and those who love him soon discover that the line between triumph and tragedy has never been finer, and that their search for answers will lead them to truths that could mean losing one another. A missing person mystery, a serial killer thriller, a love story, a unique twist on each, Chris Whitaker has written a novel about what lurks in the shadows of obsession and the blinding light of hope. That is a very good description. There's a reason why people get paid a lot of money to write those. It was really good. I recommend it if you like the sort of like thriller serial killer genre. and the like cop figuring out what's going on genre. I feel like if you like that type of book, this is one of the best attempts at writing those types of books that I have experienced personally. And I also think one of the things that's really beautiful about it is putting a very strong emphasis on the victims and giving them the light and not focusing so much on the killer, the person perpetrating these horrible acts of violence, but more on how that has impacted the community, how those girls in this case are remembered and honored. And I thought that was really, really beautiful. And it's well written. I do think like it's interesting because reading more about and like learning more about Chris Whitaker as an author afterward, I discovered that he is British. He's not American. And so it was a little bit interesting that he decided to write the novel in like small town America. Sometimes I just wonder why like authors don't choose to highlight their own lived experiences a little bit more. Yeah, just interesting. I do think that he did a good job of like portraying small town America. There was nothing in it that made me think like, oh, he's not actually like from there. Clearly did a lot of research, but I do think it's interesting to kind of like focus on a part of the world that you're not from and don't maybe know as much about. It's interesting having just read Barbara Kingsolver's novel Demon Copperhead, which was incredible, and she's like from that part of America, which just like really came through how much she knew the in and outs of that community. So anyway, All the Colors of the Dark by Chris Whitaker, really recommend if you like the kind of like thriller genre. And then completely different genre that I have been reading as well was another book that I just finished. This one I gave like a 3 out of 5, though it is a romance novel, and I think it's pretty hard for you to get a 5 out of 5 from me on a romance novel. I think I've probably given a 5 out of 5 to like maybe 2 or 3 romance novels that I've ever read. So a 3 out of 5 for me is good. That's not bad. That means like I really enjoyed reading this. It was fun. It gave me exactly what I needed. It wasn't like mind-blowing. It wasn't like the best written thing that I've ever read, but was like solidly good. And that was On the Same Page by Haley Cass. This is a wonderful sapphic love story between 2 friends who meet. They're initially roommates in college, and they are very different people. One of them is much more studious, more quiet, comes from a lower income family, and like certainly not like poor, but just like not wildly rich. And the second is a wildly rich, like supermodel influencer type person, who has their own baggage and their own complications. I think the thing that kept it from getting like a 4 out of 5 for me was that these are just like the like wildly rich, like supermodel influencer who like has hard things in their life. While I'm sure that's true, is just like a little bit hard for me to connect with. And so I think like there are times when she was like talking about how hard her life is, and that felt a little tone deaf, to be honest, especially like in Trump's America where, you know, eggs are $13 a dozen. So, yeah, I don't know. It was good. It was really fun. It was like really sexy. There's some like really good sexy scenes. I thought that it was like a really good compilation between kind of like hate, like enemies to best friends to lovers, which I thought was really fun and sort of a play that I hadn't seen done before. So that was really fun. And yeah, it's just, you know, like a lighthearted, sexy book about 2 women who are like falling in love, and it's sweet, and there's a happy ending, of course, because it's a romance, and that can feel really safe right now. And I enjoyed it. I thought it was everything that I needed, and no surprises. So solidly wonderful novel about two women falling in love. So I thought that was great. I would highly recommend it if you are looking for a sapphic love story. I think it's been kind of hard for me to find good sapphic love stories. I don't really know why. I feel like there's a lot of like LGBTQIA love stories that I have loved and read recently, but I don't know why I like haven't been able to find really wonderful sapphic love stories. So if you have, please let me know what they are, because I would love to read them. And this one was probably the best one that I have read. So still really good. And if you are looking for something lighthearted, something that will allow you to escape, and something that is safe and still well written and sexy and fun, like go pick it up. It's great. It's really great. It is like everything that I needed at the time that I was reading this, which was just like happiness and a little bit of nuance, but like not enough for me to really be triggered by it. It was so safe and wonderful. Then I'll just talk about two books that I'm reading right now, because the other one I like literally just started and I don't really have anything to say about it because I'm like a couple of pages in. But I will pick up the two books that I am reading right now. The first one is Assassin's Fate, which is the last novel in the whole realm of the Elderlings, the last novel in the Fitz and the Fool trilogy. And it is so good. It is so good. Oh my gosh. You know what? It's actually been very fun. So when I posted my last video, a lot of people were on there talking about how much they have read how much they've loved Realm of the Elderlings and picked it up because I was talking about it so much last year, and that brought me so much joy. Man, I wish I could reread this from the start again. There's a very good chance that I will finish this and just immediately start off with the first book again. Also partially because I've convinced a few of my like friends in real life to read it, and they're all obsessed with it now. And now I'm like, I need to go back to like the, you know, Farseer trilogy. Anyway, I am 360 pages, so just under halfway. There are like 900 pages in this book. So just about a third of the way through this amazing finale to the best fantasy series ever written. And I can't really say anything about this book because I don't want to give away the previous books, especially because this book culminates in the most beautiful melding of all of these characters that we have known and loved for 16 books. And they're all coming together in the most beautiful way. Let's just say, like, it's landing. It's finishing. It's giving everything. It is the best fantasy ever written. If you like fantasy, if you like character-driven novels and you like fantasy, like, this is the one. This is it. This is it. So anyway, I am finishing this. I honestly was like busting through the series and then realized that this is the fate. This is the end. There's nothing more to read. And so I had to like take a pause and read some other things because I didn't want to go through this too fast, because I know that once I get to the end, there's no more. There are no more to keep reading. And that gave me an immense sense of sadness. And I was like, I can't do it right now. Even if like there's a happy ending, it will still be the end. And that made me panic a little bit. So I stopped reading this for about a week, but I just picked it up again today, and y'all, chef's kiss, absolute perfection. And then the other novel that I picked up, and I'm about halfway through, is Shark Heart, a love story by Emily Haybeck. This is really interesting and really beautiful. This is a literary fiction novel that follows a couple who gets married, and they've fallen in love and they get married. And less than a year into their marriage, the husband of the couple falls ill with an illness that is fairly common in this alternate reality. And it is an illness in which he morphs into an animal. This is like a genetic condition that is known within this modern day United States, where you slowly or quickly turn into an animal. And you can turn into any type of animal, but it's not as if your body has turned into that animal. The body does morph, but the brain also changes. And it's almost as if you have this terminal illness that's very similar to things like dementia or Lou Gehrig's disease or ALS, things like that, where it is a terminal illness. There's nothing you can do, and your body and your mind changes. And in this case, the husband is diagnosed with this genetic disorder, but for him, he is changing into a great white shark. And this is one of the most beautiful novels I have ever read about terminal illness and what it does to a couple and the ones they love and the person experiencing it. It is heartbreaking, but so far really beautiful, and I have really enjoyed it. It's a really fast read because a lot of it is written in just sort of like these little excerpts. And it feels almost like a slice of life. What's happening? Where are they? How are they feeling? How is this impacting them? It's written in a really beautiful way that I have really enjoyed. I also feel as a healthcare provider that this book has been safe for me to read, because it's given me a glimpse into how my patients are feeling and what the experiences that they're having, while also being fantastical and so separate from our own lived reality that it allows me to have some distance from the experiences that the people are living through, which for me, you know, being someone who has told people that this is what's happening and been in the room many, many, many times as people are dying from terminal illness, I don't think I could read a book that was all about that without this sort of fantasy twist to it that makes it able for me to have some distance. So this is really good so far. I'm only about halfway through, so I'm hoping to finish this before the next time I film, but highly recommend if you're looking for a heartfelt literary fiction about a couple who falls in love and then the man turns into a great white shark. It's beautiful. Anyway, with that, I've already been blabbing on forever. Clearly, I needed to restart this podcast because I missed y'all. But it's been really fun to come on here and connect, and I hope it wasn't so terrible being downstairs in my little reading sewing nook, but it's been really great. I've had a really, really wonderful couple of weeks. I've been working a lot, like I said, but I've also made some time to spend time with my kid and go skiing and spend times outside. I'm getting really, really excited about garden season. I put in an order for all of my seeds, so I'm very excited for my seeds to come and to start my seedlings. I'm really looking forward to that. I spend a lot of my summer gardening, and so I think that's something that I'll be sharing on here if you have any interest. And yeah, other than that, it's been, you know, it's been a quiet time. It's February. It's cold. It's dark. It's beautiful. I love the snow. I love the winter, but I also feel the oppressive nature of the darkness that I'm ready to leave behind. So anyway, with that, I hope that you are taking care of yourselves. I hope you're taking care of others, and I'll see you soon. Bye.